All right. We've got a robust room. I love it. We will slowly get things started here. I'm Laura Desiree. I am your host of the 2024 Pineapple Support Mental Health Summit. It's an absolute honor to be in this role for these days of very intentional conversations. If you've seen some of the promotion, you know that this year's summit is all about the many and multifaceted relationship dynamics that this industry finds themselves involved in. We had a wonderful day one. Yesterday was all about romantic relationships. Very enlightening conversation and incredible presentation by Dr. Tess Kilwine. So, a big thanks once again to Dr. Tess. Today, we are honing in on a very special, often complicated relationship dynamic, and that's family relationships. Now, of course, there are so many positives as well. And the goal of today is to leave you feeling entirely inspired and empowered and equipped to navigate family relationships within this adult industry that we exist in. And we have a panel discussion just like yesterday. It will be starting at the top of the second hour. So at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we will kick off our panel discussion. We have some amazing panelists that are industry experts, industry legacies. So, as our audience today, I would love for you to consider the questions you might have as you're listening to today's presentation. If something comes up for you, a comment, a mention, or a direct question, you're welcome to use the chat. We also have the Q&A function here in Zoom. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see that box with a question mark. That's where you can submit your questions. So before we jump into this awesome presentation, I have to mention some sponsors. It's a great thrill to have these names involved with keeping all of the work we do at Pineapple Support going and growing. So I want to thank our sponsors for this year's summit. We have Pornhub, C4S, Strip Chat, Cam4, F2F, Feet Fix, Fan Shop, and Feel Hub X. Thank you for once again sponsoring this very important summit. I'd like to get things started here. We have a presenter today, an expert, and a little change to our scheduling. So this is someone who has jumped in very last minute to provide today's illuminating discussion on family relationships. I'm so excited to turn the floor over to Salina Smith. Salina, you are going to lead us through our presentation on family relationships. We are your audience. We are so ready to learn from you. And everyone in the chat, feel free to make a big hello and address to Salina.
Oh, let me move this down. Hi, everyone. I know some of you guys were expecting Jasmine, but I'm here today because of reasons. But I am also a sex worker. I am also a therapist with Pineapple Support and with Blue Pearl Therapy. So I'm not 100% out of the loop. Cool. So today's panel is about family ties and navigating relationships in the adult industry. Again, my name is Salina Smith. I am a member of the AAMFT and ASEX. I'm also a co-therapist at Blue Pearl Therapy, and I am also a sex worker. I specialize as far as therapy goes. I specialize in emotionally focused therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. And as far as sex work goes, I am a cam model. Ooh, putting this up right here. And so the objective for today is are to explore the family systems that can adapt to the realities of working in the adult industry. We'll address challenges like stigmas and discrimination and discuss tools to improve communication and connection within the families. And we also want to normalize the idea that family in this industry can be just as typical and functional as any other. So also throughout this presentation, I'll be dropping in like other hints and tips and tricks that can kind of work outside of the norm, because sometimes normal is based on what people make it seem to be, not necessarily what it actually is. Hopefully that makes sense, but throughout this presentation it will make sense. And so first, if we have to define what family is not 100% what you are born with, who you are bound to by blood. It could be someone you're bound to by blood. It could be a chosen family, like someone that you met as a friend and they're so close to you that you want them to be like a mother, like a grandmother, a sister, a brother, a cousin. We all have that one family cousin that's not really a cousin, but we call them our cousin because they're so close to us. Or you probably join an organization and now you have sisters and brothers from here to there. And we also have a blended family, where a blended family can be a mix of your actual family members with the people that you create a family with. So when we talk about family in this conversation, we're talking about all spectrums of family from biological, chosen, and blended. And so family relationships often face challenges, especially when stigma and misunderstandings come into play. Disclosing one's work can feel daunting, while balancing boundaries and privacy adds another layer of complexity. The reason why family members find sex work abnormal are for several reasons, and one of the biggest reasons come from body comfortability. A lot of us would probably say that we joined sex work because of something with our body. We either felt uncomfortable with our body at one point, or we're so comfortable with our body that we were like, fuck it, like I want to share it on a different platform or in a more grander type of way. A lot of our family members don't feel that way. And if we think about it, growing up, a lot of their comfortability is not the same level of our comfortability. Their comfortability comes from their own stigmas and their traumas that were placed on them by the outside world compared to how we feel now. So, for example, some of us may feel like, oh, we have pretty feet. Our family member may always wear socks, wear shoes that hide their feet. So now when you have that conversation with your family member saying like, hey, I'm a foot model, they will sit there and just find it abnormal that you want to put your body of any type on the internet or on platforms to be idolized by other people. And it doesn't come from a place of them being unsupportive of what you're doing. It comes from a place where they feel negative about themselves. They probably don't support what they're doing with their body. They probably don't like how they feel about themselves. And instead of expressing that or explaining that to you, they're going to come back and kind of put that on you. Let me try to say that again to make sure I make it make sense. They're not coming to you as in like, oh, you're the problem. They're more so coming to you as, I don't like myself enough. So I'm going to put that stigma onto you or put those issues onto you. So a lot of times when you have those conversations with your family, they're coming to you from a place of they've never felt like this before. So when, how, and where did you start to feel like this? And little fun fact, a lot of people don't know this. A big part of our kinks and our sexuality, our sensuality, actually comes from past generations. So a part of what our family feels like is abnormal to them is probably within them. They just haven't did the research. They haven't taken enough self-help, or they haven't put forth any effort into looking into the help that they need to kind of express that on a grander scale or on a larger platform. And so some of the stigmas has far-reaching efforts, often making individuals feel invisible and forcing them into avoidance behavior. It can also lead to approval of unhealthy dynamics as people prioritize societal norms over their well-being. In today's world, we are just now starting to understand the benefits of therapy. We are just now starting to understand the importance of setting boundaries. And sometimes things that trigger us aren't directly connected to us, but they are connected to our parents and our family, and it was passed down to us. So, for example, I'll use myself as an example. My mom hated the fact that I would want to get my nails painted red because red nail polish meant that you are salacious, you like to be involved in scandalous things, or just put it bluntly, you're a thought. And it's like, my favorite color is red. So why do you feel like me having red nail polish is that big of a deal that it puts on this type of image, this type of stigma onto me when all I'm doing is just wearing a nail color? Unbeknownst to me, of course, now that I'm older, she felt that way because that was a trauma placed upon her by her mother and her mother's mother and her mother's mother and her mother, like so on and so forth. Our trauma comes from generations after generations. So sometimes things that trigger us is not necessarily a direct trigger to us. It's a correlated trigger where it's coming from somewhere else, but our family member passed it on to us. So now we just feel impacted by it because of what they felt and what they were doing. Hopefully that made sense. So, family relationships can also be a source of strength. They offer opportunities for education, helping to dismantle stereotypes. When families navigate judgment together, they build resilience and foster deeper connections and more authentic connections. We have to remember that technology is still fairly new. So, most of us are older than a computer. Most of us are older than the internet. So, when our family members and people before us were growing up, the only type of sex work they were aware of was Playboy magazines, Hustler, um, oh, what was another one? What was another one? It's coming to my head. Penthouse, or just escorting. So having those open conversations with your family members creates an opportunity for true education. Like, what type of sex work are you doing? How safe are you being? You're able to create that field for them to understand that is more than you're doing more or less than just what they grew up watching. And also, a lot of times they are just going based off of what they see on the free sites, not the paid sites, not the sites that have back pages after back pages. They're not aware of the extent of how safe sex work is, and also they're not aware of the boundaries that you set upon amongst people in order to make your living. And so the tools for navigating family relationships, these tools can help navigate family dynamics. For example, open communication fosters mutual understanding, while setting boundaries protect your emotional well-being. Advocacy and support networks also play a crucial role in fostering relationships. And so when you create these relationships and you start to have those conversations with family, 100% use I feel statements to kind of put yourself in a position of directing the conversation. Because I'm going to be honest with you, when you have this conversation, or if you haven't already had the conversation with your family, the conversation will no longer be about your feelings. It will mainly be about their feelings. Well, why did you have to do this? Why are you a part of this community? Why? It's going to be a lot of why questions, but it's not why questions that cater to your feelings. It's going to be why questions that cater to stroking their ego in a sense, or trying to make them become comfortable. They're trying to ask questions to make themselves become comfortable, and it now makes you feel like you're taking out of the equation, and now you're having a conversation with them to support them. As a therapist, I will say that if the conversation is not able to go the way that you would like for it to go, or you and that family member are just hitting a huge clash, then definitely seek some type of counseling or group therapy, something of the sort, to have someone come in and mediate, and also pick a therapist that specializes in family dynamics and sex work. The reason why both are crucial is because some therapists may be able to most therapists are able to navigate family problems and create solutions. However, we all know that sex work is a different dynamic. It's not completely different, and it should be normalized, and it is normalized in our world. But amongst other people, which is why we're having this conversation, they don't understand the true nature of what we are doing and how we cater to society. So having a therapist that not only specializes in family therapy and sex work, they will be able to help the family member be more cooperative on your end, and they'll also provide you with a type of reassurance, because the last thing that you would need as a sex worker is have your family member and your therapist that you're paying be putting you in a position where you feel now isolated, and you're putting yourself in a position where you just gotta like sit there and just take all the negativity that's coming into you. So it's essential to normalize the reality that many individuals in the adult industry live very typical lives. They balance work and personal responsibilities just like professionals in any other field. So if we think about it, I'm going to give you guys an example. If you are a parent, let's just say, for an example, your child is of age where they can go to a park by themselves. The park is, let's say, 2, 3 blocks away from your house, and they say, hey, parent, I'm about to go to the park with my friends. I'll be back within 2 hours. And you're like, all right, cool. You know who the friends are, you know who the other parents are, so you're not totally out of the loop. You're able to just keep a track on them the way that you want to. 2 hours go by, they haven't called you, they haven't texted you, they haven't said anything. 2.5 hours go by. Now you're a little worried, but you're like, okay, you know what? It's only been 30 minutes. Let me give it some more time, whatever the case may be. Now 2 hours and 45 minutes go by. You're calling their phone, you're texting them, they're not responding. Now you're on your way to the park. You go to the park and you see them, they're playing basketball, they're on the swing set, they're doing whatever, they're still at the park. But now, while you are there at the park and you're like, hey, I've been calling you, I've been texting you, you said 2 hours, I'm just here to make sure you're okay. And they're like, oh, no, it's cool. I've just been busy and I lost track of time. So I didn't pay attention to my phone or anything like that. I'm sorry. And it's like, okay, cool. As a parent in that moment, those 30 to 45 minutes that you didn't hear from your child, it got you nervous. It had you a little bit worried. You were focused. You might have thought about what could have happened. They're at a public park. People could see them. All the things that ran across your mind could have happened. Think about that for your family members in an extended amount of time. Let's expand it more. You talk to your family members about you being a sex worker and you are working in this community, and let's say they don't hear from you for a year. Family events come by, um, group FaceTime calls, holidays come by, birthdays, just different events happen over time, and your family member does not hear from you or they don't see you. You pop in every blue moon and be like, hi, and then you say bye. That is the same feeling that they may feel how you felt when your child went to the park. There has been an extended amount of time that you didn't hear from them, so now it makes them wonder and or worry about you, because while there are beautiful things that do come from this industry, that does come from sex work, there are also some stigmas and some cons that do affect how we think, how we feel, and also how the outside world thinks and feels. So trying to make family as normal as possible while also making sex work as normal as possible helps everyone balance everything out. Attending school events, hosting dinners, and celebrating a milestone. Like, even for right now, Jasmine was supposed to be here. We all know that Jasmine is married and she has kids. Her kids come first, her relationship, her family comes first compared to sex work. And the beautiful thing about sex work is we have an open schedule where we're able to set things up the way that we want to. So try to set things up in a way that aligns with you supporting your family, so that way they can support you mentally. Let's emphasize the mentally, and then be able to be there for you in times where you need them the most. So, with this case scenario, let's consider a common challenge navigating a parent's misunderstanding of your career. Use this opportunity to apply the tools and the tools like communication and education to bridge the gap. There's always two responses that I have to this question. The scenario says, I just don't understand why you chose this life. My advice is always to have two types of answers. If you haven't already had the conversation, or if you plan on rehaving the conversation, if a question like this is presented to you, have two responses. One response is a cookie cutter response, and the other one is a blunt response. The cookie cutter one is always short, sweet, and to the point. I just don't understand why you chose this lifestyle. I chose this lifestyle because it helps me feel better about my body. Cookie cutter. Short, sweet, to the point. I feel better about my body. And then we can go into more reasons as to why if we want to, but it's short, sweet, and to the point. A blunt answer is telling them a harsh truth that they need to hear. And the reason why I'm putting an emphasis on need to hear is because a lot of our family members, they may not be receptive to what you are going to tell them, because sometimes a lot of us got into sex work because of trauma, and we turned our trauma into some money. We turned our trauma into something beautiful and we recreated our story. And a blunt answer could be, well, growing up, my uncles had always told me that I was fat and I needed to lose weight in order to get a man, and I won't ever be anything in life if I look the way that I look. And now that I'm older, I see that there's a lot of people who's willing to pay to see my body, who's willing to put money, time, energy into me just for posting a picture on the internet. There's people who are willing to lust over me and do whatever for me just because I do this type of work. Just because I'm on the phone with them, whatever type of sex work it may be, I now see that what he said about me was not true at all. And so now I'm getting my power back and taking control of my emotions, my body, and everything else. That's a blunt answer. Cookie cutter, short, sweet, to the point. Blunt answer, something that they need to hear, but it's a harsh truth that they may not expect to hear. And how do you know when to utilize both answers? You just scope the scene out. If the family member that you're talking to, they are willing, they're showing that they are open and willing to listen, and they are willing to talk to you through the situation and navigate through all of this, then give them the blunt answer, because the blunt answer creates that open line of communication and it rewrites your relationship with that family member. If the family member is showing like why, asking a lot of why questions, give them the cookie cutter answer. Because in therapy, when you ask a lot of why questions, every why question has an answer. Why did you choose to do this? Because I like the way my body feels. Well, why didn't you like your body before? Because people made me feel uncomfortable about my body. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to tell you and you didn't listen. Well, why didn't you try again? Again, every why question leads to another answer. So if they're always asking why, they're not being really receptive to what you're saying. They're just trying to figure out something to get out of you until it's an answer that they're okay with hearing. So always have two answers nipped and tucked so that way you can be able to navigate how the conversation goes and get your power back. Because again, you're not going to have a lot of control in the conversation, because family at times are going to feel so lost because they don't see you as wet kitty hashtag 335. They're going to see you as Ashley. And Ashley that they knew growing up was sweet, innocent, and always played with Barbie dolls. You still are sweet and innocent, but you also have a life that you have to take care of. You also have you that you have to take care of. And if they are not receptive of that, it's going to continuously be a thing of just trying to hear an answer that makes them feel good rather than giving you the support that you need in order to make you feel better. And so that leads into supporting mental wellness. Mental wellness is vital. Self care practices like mindfulness, peer support, and stress management can maintain emotional balance. Once you have that conversation with your family, you do need time to focus on yourself. A bit of advice that I would give if you did not already have the conversation with your family, or you plan on revisiting the conversation with your family, let me go back. Or you plan on revisiting the conversation with your family, I would suggest taking a week off. Like, let's say you have the conversation with your family on a Saturday. Sunday through Saturday, a week off. No talks with family, no sex work. If you have children of your own, of course, engage with your children, engage with your household, but don't do anything else outside of your interpersonal family in your house and controlling yourself. Because again, that conversation is very much so going to be catered to supporting their feelings and not yours. And after you have that conversation, sometimes you may feel less than you have already felt before. You might have felt a little, I can't think of the word right now, so I'm just going to say a word like bluntly. You might have felt a little scared to have the conversation with them prior to, and then now after you have the conversation, they don't make you feel no better. They make you feel worse. They make it seem as if like, oh, you're a terrible person because you chose to do this. And while all before they knew about you being a sex worker, before they knew about you being in the industry, you were living life. You were traveling, you were making new clients, you were having fun conversations, you were making money, like you were so happy with what you were doing. And then now you build up the courage and you're like, you know what? I'm ready to live in my truth because I'm tired of being behind a closet. I want to talk to them about, who I am. You tell them about who you are, and now it's just you are a problem. You. It's a whole bunch of this going on, and none of this is happening. None of the fingers pointing back at them is happening. It's nothing but just you being a problem. So now you have to sit back after taking all that stuff in. You have to go back to work like everything is normal. You have to go present yourself in front of other people like everything is okay when it's not. And it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel like, wow, I really thought you were going to be more receptive in this and you're showing me that you're not. Okay. Okay. It's okay to not be okay. One of the reasons why it's best for you to have a therapist or a mental health counselor, because it helps support that it's okay to not be okay. And just a little fun fact, if your mental health counselor or your therapist makes you feel like it's a burden for you to come to them and talk to them about these problems, report them ASAP. No therapist should ever make you feel less than, especially when you're in a situation where you're going to talk to them about your family making you feel less than. So I would 100% say make time for yourself after you have that conversation just to get your thoughts together. Even if your family was super supportive of you being in this industry, take time for yourself and just reflect on all the support that happened. Make yourself feel your feelings again so that when you go back to work, you're up and ready to just move however you want to move. And also with that, create a supportive network, build a supportive network. We all know we're here right now with pineapple support. And there's also BIPOC, there's SWOP, Blue Pearl Therapy, both me and Jasmine. Again, we are sex workers and we are also, I'm under her direction at Blue Pearl Therapy, but I'm also a therapist there. And just find you a community. Like a lot of people in the industry, they have work husbands, they have work wives. Think of your work husband, your work wife, your work peers, your work family. Utilize them outside of work as well because sometimes you need help in and out of work because your work husband could be great on camera with you, but then when you're feeling down before your shoot or you're feeling a type of way after your scene and it has nothing to do with your work husband, but imagine you just do an amazing scene with your work husband and now you're sad afterwards because of the conversation or whatever with your family, and then your work husband comes in to ask what's going on with you, how are you feeling, and you kind of express to them what's going on and they're not being receptive of it. That doesn't make you feel the greatest. So find you a community, a network of people that supports Salina and Fairy. Find a community that supports you as yourself and as a sex worker. Even though you yourself is a sex worker, together, you have to find strength in both. Because when you don't find strength in both, that's where it starts to like disconnect and makes it feel heavier. And when we find a community of people, we really find like our best of friends. We find our social light. We find everyone that we really look for in and out of this community. And to be honest, sex worker friends are at times more fun than our regular friends, but that's just a biased opinion. So, some closing takeaways is again, family is fluid and self defined. If you have to, because sometimes you have to. If you have to cut off people in your life because they're not so supportive of you, they're not super receptive of who you are, what you've become, or what you learned about yourself, it is okay to create those boundaries. It is okay to say, well, you know what, this is how you feel. That's fine. If you don't support me, I am okay with keeping my distance from you. I am okay with only talking to you every blue moon and so on and so forth. Another way that you can create those boundaries with family is telling them bluntly, like, not to look your name up. If your family member watches porn or watches anything or engages in any type of sex work as a paying client, have them tell them to not look you up. It's kind of hard sometimes, depending on what level of sex work or what type of sex work that we do, where the person can see us or not. But just telling them bluntly, like, just don't look me up, kind of creates that layer of like reality for them. Like, okay, I can't enjoy my my pleasure the way that I want to because I don't support my family member. And that reality sinks in for them, where it's like, dang, I will sit here and spend money on other sex workers. I will sit here and engage with other sex workers, but then I draw a line or I draw a boundary of my own family member. I will support these other people with my financial with my finances, but when it comes to my own flesh and blood or created family member, this is where I set the line at. That reality sinks in for them kind of quickly, and it makes them realize, am I really doing this in a way that's helpful, or am I really ready to cut off this boundary and cut this line of communication because of my own biases and my own challenges? Challenges can be addressed with tools and resilience. Blunt, honest answers. You got to be blunt with people sometimes. People don't like blunt honesty, and that's because a lot of our parents have been lied to a lot of their lives. So they carry, not just our parents, but a lot of people have been lied to so much in their lives that they carry those lives over. Just like, this is a very weak lie, but it's the one I can think of right now. We all know that Santa Claus isn't real. However, when we were kids, our parents really put it on to us. Oh, Santa Claus, if you don't act right, Santa Claus is gonna da 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 da. And it's like, okay, you didn't have to tell me about Santa Claus as a child. However, I get it. It's a fun, friendly way to keep me engaged in the holidays. Whereas an even bigger lie, something that could have traumatized you or highly affected you, is if you eat this cookie, you're gonna have type 2 diabetes for the rest of your life. And it's just like, bitch, it's one cookie, number one. And number two, you made these cookies. So why would you get mad at me for having one cookie a day when you made them? And now I'm about to have a disease of some sort. Like, where did that even come from? Overstretching the truths at times is what causes those challenges and what causes that conflict between family members. And so, if you have to separate yourself from said people, do it. It can be hard. And again, that goes back to having a therapist or a mental health counselor or having a community, someone or some people that is there to support you in those times and in those moments so that way you can navigate those challenges. And so, yeah, that is the summary of it all. I hope you guys have enjoyed this webinar, and I will stop sharing my screen
Oh,
from here.
Salina, thank you so much for this. I mean, I had some sidebar chats going with both attendees and some of our Pineapple team, and we are just in awe. Thank you for equipping us in
No
this way.
problem.
It's so it feels good when you leave a session like this and you have these tools to apply to your life. Thank you for just how thoughtful this was. This is a really great opportunity, audience, to have some one-on-one time with Salina. So, we do have about 20 minutes before our next section starts. And it's funny, yesterday we didn't have some one-on-one time. So this is like, audience, your opportunity. If you have questions, we can bring them to Salina right now. As you're gathering those, I would like to also state this is the holiday season for so many of us, and I know we're getting ready to do some of those family confrontations, those times that we're mixing with family members, and depending on whether or not we are out to our family, there is a palpable tension there. So, if there is some advice that you need at this time, another great opportunity. I'm looking here at the chat, and Alex says, so helpful, thank you. My biggest takeaway was having the direct, clear-cut answer to why, and then another answer that's more vulnerable and deep and goes into our story. Yeah. See, we've got some solid takeaways. Here's one for you. This is from Onyx. What is your opinion about people who choose to never disclose to their family?
That's up to you. The only thing is, it depends on what type of sex work that you do. And if your family member also engages in that type of sex work. Just to give like a blunt example, let's say you do adult film and like you're in part of the adult film industry. If your family member goes on Pornhub a lot, you kind of can't hide that you are on Pornhub. So it's kind of one of those things where it depends on what you're doing. And if you don't want to disclose it to them, that's fine. But also ask yourself, if you don't disclose it to them, how is that going to make you feel in the later future? Because now there's a part of you that you have to keep from your family. And especially if your family and you are close, because a lot of times in these examples that we're giving, it was kind of like the harsher side of sex work and family members. There is a lighter side where there are some family members that really do support people who are in sex work. So you have to just kind of gauge on what kind of family member you're having this conversation with and how are they going to treat you in the midst of, because not all family is, I can't think of the word right now, but not all family members do not support sex workers. A lot of them do, but it just depends on, how are you going to feel if you don't talk about it? It's more so about how are you going to feel afterwards.
Yeah, and living with that compartmentalized approach to your relationships, right?
Hmm.
Feel to live with one narrative and another narrative. It's a choice that you have to weigh those options on. We have one here from Kylie who asks, what boundaries, if any, can be set with family regarding discussing or acknowledging this kind of work in the adult content creation industry? How can we enforce those boundaries respectfully?
Okay, what boundaries can be set? One boundary, I think I said it while I was presenting, is telling them to bluntly not look up your name. You could tell them like my content name is Fairy or Fairy Sex Mother. My family knows don't look up Fairy because it's just associated to me. So they know like if they see Fairy, then that's Salina's sex work and not the other side of her. So there's a blunt way to put it, but there's also think about what makes you you and what you are comfortable with sharing. So first try to look into yourself and figure out what you are comfortable with sharing and then decipher what is best for the family. Like, are you comfortable with telling them your sex worker name? Are you comfortable with sharing with them as far as what type of sex work do you do? Are you comfortable with disclosing how much money you may make? Because family might ask that kind of question. Just try to decide, like make a list. If I had to put it in like a way of advice, create a list of like 10 things that you know for a fact if you were talking to your friend or if you were talking to a client, what you would say to your friend or your client. And then through those 10 things, create or not create, through those 10 things, pick five that you know for sure that you could tell a family member. So that way it's like you can decide on how much you want to share with them and also kind of take back your power. Because again, a lot of the conversation is going to be why, and it's to motivate their feelings and it's not to advocate for you. And then your second, how can we also enforce those boundaries? You got to enforce them. If your family comes back and say, well, I'm just not going to talk to you until you're finished, don't talk to me. If they say, um, I can't think of like a lot of examples at the moment, but you have to be the one to enforce those boundaries. If you don't enforce those boundaries, if you sit there and say, well, if you don't support me, then I'm not going to show up for this function, but then you show up anyways, then what are you really doing for yourself? We have to remember that even though there's this side to sex work, there's also a side that's still very empowering and it's very still you focused. Sex work is not about a corporate company and you have to answer to a higher boss and anything like that. Sex work is primarily you working for yourself and then you deciphering what you want to do. So if you can create a schedule, if you can have boundaries with your clients, if you can create a healthy boundary with yourself, if you're able to, if you are a parent yourself and you're able to divide your parent life from your sex worker life, you're able to create boundaries and reinforce those boundaries upon other people and they have no choice but to respect it. And if they don't respect it, then the sad part is they will have to deal with that side of you where you're going to be like less of yourself to them, but that's still empowering you at the end of the day. So I
And
hope that.
great mention about the parenting aspect. I know that that is one of the subjects we'll be talking about a little bit more thoroughly in our panel, which is coming up. So those of you with questions around parenting and navigating those conversations, stay tuned. We do have a dedicated opportunity to get into that and hear from others that exist with that dynamic in play. We have a submitted question here that says, how do you deal with a family member who blocked you, but then asks for a second chance to be a part of your life?
There's two sides to it. Why? There's no point of asking why. Why questions lead to more answers. There's two sides of it. You could reblock them and keep themselves distant because maybe it was someone that you needed out of your life. Maybe the universe set a sign for you and now you just have to take it and keep it pushing. But there's also the other side where that leads to having an open, honest conversation because now it opens that door to for further education. Because again, a lot of us are older than the internet and older than a computer. So they don't know really how far sex work has gone, especially in today's society. So they might have blocked you off the strength of just, I can't believe you're doing this. Whereas they're now like, okay, you know what? I miss you. I want to reconnect with you. I want to understand you more. And the best way to do that is provide them education because even after you educate them, you could reblock them. Like you can distance yourself from them again, but now you've provided them education to where if it happens again or if it happens to somebody else, they now know, well, let me not discriminate against them just because of what they chose to do to make their money or to live the life that they want to live.
Such an important mention, what you just said about how they may perceive what this work is
Mhm.
based on how they've been informed by it and how they are likely missing a complete understanding of just how diversified the industry has become and how the definition of sex worker has expanded in so many ways, especially just exponentially in the last few years, right? Uh, let's see, here's a follow-up. For creators whose families are supportive, what do you think helped them accept such career choice? Um, I, I, I would love just a moment to weigh in on this myself personally because I did have that experience in my life when I made a very intentional conversation happen with my family. That's always been tight knit. I've got an identical twin sister and a father who raised me, and there was that deciding moment of explaining to them exactly the job that I do and the content that I create. And it was met with a long pause of contemplation, right?
Mhm.
There wasn't an immediate acceptance from my father. There was an immediate acceptance from my sister. There was not that so suddenly with my father. And that pause I found very um, uh, graining. I found it very challenging to sit with. And I dealt with feelings of losing hope completely that I may ever be accepted or embraced by this family member again. So there is the need to give it time. It can be news that is jarring. It can be news that's very heavy for someone who loves you to comprehend. It doesn't always mean it's going to end in a negative result. It ended up, in my experience, resulting in a positive relationship bonding. But I think what they're really looking for is to ensure that you are safe, that you
Mhm.
are prideful in what you are doing, and that is important to communicate to them because it goes against that narrative that we are forced into this work, or that narrative that this work makes us feel endangered and ugly about our lives. I think if you lead with pride in speaking about the work that you're doing and the ways that it has improved your quality of life, that is a great way of opening that conversation for better results.
Mhm.
Just my 2 cents on it. I don't know, Salina, if you've got some advice for folks on this.
Not really. I would also say that it probably might have worked that way because some families are more sex friendly than others. Some families might have talked to you about sex when you were a child, where there were some families that were like, you can't have sex until you're married. Some families might have said, oh, you know, you shouldn't touch hands with somebody that you're not fond of because it could it can make something weird for you where some families say like, oh, you get the cooties from touching little boys. It just really depends on the kind of family dynamic that you had growing up that determines like, you know, what their response may be. And even then some of the most preacher church like family members are also some of the most kink friendly sex related people on this planet. So it just depends. It solely depends.
Yeah. Yeah, and everyone who's in our audience right now, I know that these can be long sessions. We've got, 2 hours of this summit today. So this might be an opportunity for a break if you want to step away, bathroom breaks, beverage breaks, whatever it might be. Have a moment to collect yourself, reground, recenter, get ready for another hour of conversation. This is a great opportunity to do so. Also, if you know someone that could benefit from attending our panel, a great opportunity to let them know that we are starting in just a few minutes. So, get the message out wherever you can. And of course, we also have another 2 days of this summit. So there's more opportunity to continue advancing your learning and picking up some more skills. This is our 4 days of very intensive, intentional conversation. So thank you for attending, everyone. And little by little, I know that we do have our panelists on board as well. So we will be revealing them very shortly and getting into some really thoughtful conversation. But again, the Q&A is open for you. The chat is open for you. Please use this opportunity to get some answers to areas you need some guidance on. Should I do one of those? Let's do it. Let's do one of those donation mentions. Are we ready? Folks, it's the season of giving and receiving. And all of the work that we do here at Pineapple Support is, of course, entirely donation based. We are proud and so grateful to be able to provide services in the mental health capacity to folks that make a living in sex work in the adult industry. So, as you're considering where to put some love, some help, and support this time of the year, you can always make donations direct on our website. If you are affiliated or connected to folks that have a philanthropic tendency, some of us, we know who we're talking about here, please do direct them as well to that page and help keep this service available to all of us who need it and who utilize it. Oh, I also have a very loud atmosphere, Salina, so I might mute from time to time. I'm in the most congested corner of Manhattan, just on the second floor, a little treetop above the streets of chaos. So,
I was so afraid that people were going to hear it and be like, ma'am, you supposed to be here helping us, and yet you have your lawn guy outside just going away, and now he's done. So
honey, a lawn guy is so forgivable. I've got some of the craziest conversations. It's not a competition, but the shit that I hear from my windowsill is enough to, make even the most seasoned kinkster faint. I guarantee it. It's a fucking wild corner here.
gotta love it.
Oh, gotta love
Oh,
it.
something I totally forgot to mention that I could have added into the presentation is also another stigma. The reason why family members could be like afraid about the industry that we do is because we got to think about the scenes that we create in the industry sometimes. A lot of scenes are closely associated to certain people's lifestyle. So now if you look at the scene that you do, like of course if you're into content creation and you do stuff like that, if you're doing a scene that's associated to like a mailman, a lawn guy, uh, a dentist, a doctor, whatever, now it could make the family member think like, oh, did this happen to you at the doctor's? Do you look at our mailman like that? Are you sleeping with your stepsister? Have you ever thought about being with your stepbrother? Stuff like that. So it's also triggers and other things that aid to stigmas around this industry.
Mm, so real. There's a question here from Kylie. Um, You mentioned your family's aware of what you do and you've had a healthy convo. What advice would you give to adult creators struggling with family judgment or misunderstanding in their career? Again, I'm going to come back to that pause that's necessary. It might not be a complete write-off, depending on when this news was delivered. People do need time to process. People do need time to come to terms with what you've relayed to them. However, a wonderful activity that I do from time to time. And I just redid it in my phone the other day was I have a notes app and I have one note that's just titled family. And this is a list I keep of folks that I consider my extended family, my chosen family. Sometimes even having those names visible to you in a place that you can access from time to time. Having that community, having that chosen family is essential. This can be immensely isolating work. It can be a very you can wrestle with it internally, right? As you question, am I losing family based on continuing down this path? You don't need to feel that a family is lost when you do supply yourself the awareness that there is chosen family and there's extended family as well. Uh, oh, there was a comment that was just erased. Oh, maybe it's in the questions now. What advice would you give to a performer who's open and honest with their kids, but the grandparents and other family members disagree?
Your kids, your not your problem, because kids are not a problem. So I don't want to say it like that, but like understand when I say problem, as in like that's something that you got to deal with. How you raise your kids in this world is how you feel like you should raise your kids. Because a lot of us, I don't have kids, so let me go ahead and preference that. But a lot of us who do have kids, we don't want to raise our kids like how our parents raised us because we know the trauma that our parents put on us and we hated it. We are like, no, I don't want to whoop my child. A lot of us nowadays don't believe in whoopings. We believe in this thing called gentle parenting. When it's not called gentle parenting, it's just called open communication and honest communication. So it's your kids, your thing. However, I will say that depending on your child's age, should determine how far or how much they should know. If your child is just not learning how to talk, they know how to say mama and dada. That is not the time for you to be like, okay, condoms, porn, all this other kind of stuff. No. If your child just had a menstrual cycle, that is not the time to say, all right, pregnancy goes like this, and like here's all the STDs in the world, and da da da. No. Understand your child's development, their understanding, their comprehension skills, and as they grow older and as they're able to receive more things and have a conversation with you, you educate them. So don't spew it all on them at one time, but also don't leave them out of the loop because it's I used to work with children. I used to be a music teacher, and in working with children, they knew what porn was. They knew what how to get on Pornhub, how to get on browsers, so on and so forth. So they knew. And the crazy thing is, you would never want your child to be one of those kids where they're at school and it's like, oh, there's Timmy. His mom was on Pornhub the other day. Like, you don't want your child to be in that situation where they can't even defend themselves or defend you in your honor while you're not there. But again, your child, your problem, but not a bad thing to say problem.
Well said. I'm seeing a couple more questions have come in. What I'd like to do is actually, they're fabulous questions. I'm going to save them and incorporate them into the panel discussion to keep us on time here. We do have the start of a new hour, which means people may be joining us for this specific part of the summit. I'm just checking yes. So if you're if you're working on that waiting room for us pineapple support, please do let those folks in immediately. I know that the advertisements did put this panel as well as a special mention, so some of you are joining just for the panel, and we're delighted to have you. Again, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their holiday season, out of their busy workflow, middle of the day hours to join us for this. If you've got us in your ears and not on your screens, you are still a part of this. If you are saving this for another time, if you are, relaying information to other people who can't join us, just thank you for being a part of what we're doing here. It really is going to make a difference in the long run. I know that I can feel it confidently.